Hi YouTube, it's Kimberly and Andre. We are back with another video. Today we just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys quickly about what is homesteading. A lot of people are kind of asking what the difference is between homesteading versus city life. They don't exactly know what it entails. So we thought we'd give you a quick little description with a couple ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, since we've moved out here, many people are looking into homesteading and not understanding the difference, like she said, between city and homesteading, and actually homesteading and off-grid, which entail is basically the same thing. But the definition we're going to give out is basically what we interpret as homesteading. Everyone's going to have their own version of homesteading. So when it comes to us, it's basically being as self-sustainable as possible, raising your own food, raising your own meat, and using everything as much as you can to the full extent. I think that would cover that, yeah. In
terms of like recycling everything.
That's right. Like we even use when we make eggs, we use the eggshells for our gardens, and there are other things that you can use with eggshells. Coffee grinds, like I said in one of my last videos, we use it also in the garden, in the compost, and skin products, things of that nature.
And for cleaning.
Absolutely. And then anything left over that we use to, like, once we process our animals, say the bones after when we make chicken broth or whatever, then we'll give it to the dogs. And I know anyone out there is probably going to be like, you're not supposed to feed dogs chicken bones, but it is what it is.
They seem fine so far. They've made it so far.
Humans aren't supposed to do a lot of things, and we still do it.
Here we are doing them anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So essentially, like Andre said, we just want to recycle everything through and use everything as much as possible. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a use. Even down to the animal feces, we use that as compost and as great fertilizer in our gardens as well. So. Yeah, I would say that's a general definition. That's our specific definition, but that's a general definition of homesteading to begin with, because of the fact that a lot of homesteaders recycle things and use things so that they are recycled as much as possible and used as much as possible.
And you kind of, it's mostly a do-it-yourself lifestyle. So the heating, you could run propane heat if you wanted to, but again, you're paying money for that. So we use firewood. Yes, you still have to use gasoline to fire up the chainsaw. However, that heat is going to last you a lot longer, and is actually a lot nicer than any other heat that I've had in the city. You also have your own water supply. And there's people out here right now in the West Coast here. We've had very, very cold temperatures these past couple weeks, and there are people out there that their rivers have run dry, so they don't have water in the house, and so they got to kind of adapt, and they go outside, and because we have an abundance of snow out here, that is water, and so basically they collect that snow and put it on their wood-burning stove to melt the snow, and now they have water. And it's one of those also things you have to do, is thinking outside the box and working with what you got. I have another term for that, but it's not appropriate for this channel right now. Yeah, exactly. And so kind of another question is what made the move out to here is looking at the world right now, and not getting into politics, but just looking at the supply chain system. It's very fragile, and the system's not going to be able to keep up with everybody and the demand that we as people not want, or not need, but want. We've been a very what's the word I'm looking for? Consumerist. Humans, and we just consume a lot. So you can see it now going in through the grocery stores and stuff, that meat has gone up, and a lot of
eggs have gone up.
Eggs and dairy products and things like that. So and at the same time, now we have one of our goats milk that's producing milk, and Kimberly for the first time has actually tried what real milk is, and not your store-bought chalk water. And she'll tell you right now, there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference, a huge difference. What did I make the other day with goat's milk? Oh, mashed potatoes.
Yes.
So I made mashed potatoes with potatoes from our garden, and with milk from one of our goats. And I used butter. At this point, that's store-bought butter, but once we have enough milk, when she produces a little bit more, I'll be making my own butter as well, my own cheese and things like that. And not buying it from the store. So you have the added advantage of, we have the added advantage, or if you're a homesteader, in the true sense of the word, you have the added advantage of knowing where your food comes from, because you are connected to that food, on a very intimate level. If we don't go out and feed the animals don't eat, and then we don't have animals. So it's part of a daily lifestyle and a daily process. It's definitely not a lifestyle that a lot of people think about, because people don't think about where their food actually comes from and what actually goes into the process of how their food is made. Whereas with us, we are much closer to the food source.
Yeah. Another way you could look at homesteading and what it is, it brings you back to the actual natural ways of how we used to do things. Living in the city nowadays is not what I would say humans are designed to live in, and I know there'll be arguments out there that we evolve as humans and things of that nature, but I've said it before, we are one species that can't live in its own habitat anymore, or has forgotten how to live in its own habitat. So it's one of those things to bring us back to reality and realize how precious life is, and it's not just about doing the latest and greatest or having the latest and greatest.
Yes, or being in the current world.
Exactly.
You also want to have survival skills and be able to rely on yourself for certain things. There's some things that as a woman, and because I'm smaller, I can't do. If you notice the video that I did a couple of days ago when Andre left Homestead, I put up a video. There were a couple things I couldn't do, but for the most part I was capable of doing most things.
It's not that she didn't know how to do it, it's just that she has not had the experience. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and that's one thing that it's definitely taught me here on our homesteading journey since we've been here. But yeah, like I said in that video, it was a little bit of a wake-up call. So I'm over here living the lifestyle, having some wake-up calls. I can imagine what it would be like if someone else was kind of thrust into it with no sort of experience or background or way to do it, right?
Or someone to kind of guide them, because I kind of have the know-how of or thinking outside the box or whatever to kind of help her out when she needs to.
Right.
And another question we do get asked is, what can you do, even though you're in the cities, to kind of start homesteading if that's something you're looking to do? One of the best ways, I would think, hands down, is to grow your own backyard chickens. Many people in the city are allowed a certain amount of chickens in the backyard.
Anywhere from 4 to 6.
Depending on where you live. Exactly. And I think some of them don't allow a rooster because he likes to wake up really early and make noise. But you look into that, then that way you'll get your own. Don't only look at egg layers, you can look at meat chickens too. Meat chickens you'll only have for 8 weeks, so you'll have to deal with a little bit of a commotion if you have both, but it's another way that you can supplement your
own food source.
And learn at the same time. And chicken poop is great fertilizer for your garden.
Which would be another thing that you could, a practical tip that you could do in the city, depending on how big your backyard is or your front yard is, and what your kind of rules and regulations are. If you're in the city somewhere, you may be able to have your own vegetable garden. A lot of people like to plant flowers, and a lot of people that I know like to have flowers, and flowers are beautiful. It's great to have plants and trees and all that stuff, but you want to have a more utilitarian purpose for the green space that you do have there. So planting your own vegetable garden, or certain fruit trees. Again, you'd have to be careful with certain climates and things like that, depending on where you live. But it's definitely a practical tip is to grow some of your own food and your own produce, especially with the prices of vegetables and fruits these days. They're getting very expensive. They're almost as bad as meat. Yeah,
and another thing is that especially now in the winter, you can't grow much outside. A good thing you could start indoors, and that's very simple, is starting your own herb garden. So you can grow your own basil and parsley and
oregano,
all that little stuff. And I know they have those little contraptions that you sit on your counter with the LED light, and you can kind of learn how things grow and the process and what climate certain plants like. And another tip you can do is, if you want to go a little step further, is if you have an unfinished basement or finished basement and you want to try it indoors, they have some great LED lighting out there, and you can light up your basement and get some ventilation going. And I know it's a little outside the box of homesteading, but it's a way to learn how to grow your own vegetables before you do it outdoors.
On the topic of an unfinished basement, something else that you could do with an unfinished basement would be to turn it into a root cellar. That requires a little bit more construction than your regular basement, or a little bit different construction, I should say, than your regular basement, just because you have to make sure that there's certain ventilation procedures that are followed to make sure your food doesn't go bad, depending on how long you plan on storing stuff in your root cellar. But that would be a very practical way of being able to have food long term in a root cellar. That being said, I'll say firsthand from experience from this past year, having a root cellar is a learning curve for a lot of people, for myself included. It's definitely been an experience trying to figure out what the right humidity is, what the right temperature is, what foods I can store where, and what foods not to store next to each other. And so, yeah, a couple tips coming up with that one, I think, with the root cellar, because I've had definitely some interesting experiences. But another practical way for you to be homesteading in the city, or live a more self-reliant or self-sufficient life when you're in the city.
Yeah, and and to branch off the root cellar note, you can look into getting into pickling and jarring your own food. And you can start right now. You don't necessarily have to grow your own vegetables out of your own garden. You can literally go to the grocery store and buy eggs and pickle eggs. You can go buy beets and pickle beets, store carrots, anything.
Potatoes.
Potatoes
too.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many things that you can just go out to the store right now and learn how to preserve it for long term, and then you'll know the do and don'ts, and if you seal the jars properly, if you didn't, it's all a learning curve. So jars are very cheap. You can get them at Walmart for like $12 for, I think it was 2 dozen of them for 500 mils, and you can get a liter jars too.
Yes. Yeah, on that note too, I will say for myself, with the canning of items and pickling of items and things like that, you just have to be careful with what you put next to each other. Like I said, it's been a learning curve. It's definitely been interesting. But one thing that I've really found helpful, and people will be surprised perhaps at this, we have the internet. We have the internet in our society. If you don't know how to do something, and there's been many things I haven't known how to do, I will look it up. If I don't know how to properly store something, or properly even just do something, but if speaking specifically with the root cellar and with food, if I don't know how to do it, I will look it up. There are so many helpful ideas on the internet to store carrots, potatoes, lemons, apples, all of these different tips and tricks, and you have it right at your fingertips. Back, even 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have that sort of resource. So definitely grateful for that, but that's a little tip for thinking outside the box. I mean, it seems like it's a little common sense. But
well, that's probably how you got to this video right here.
Exactly. It seems like it's common sense to look something up if you don't know about it. I tell my students all the time, there's no shame in not knowing something. And as a teacher, people think I'm supposed to know everything. Not true. If I don't know something, I will be the first person to say I don't know. There's no shame in that. It's just knowing, or it's not, there's no shame in not knowing something. There's shame in not wanting to learn about it. And we have, like I said, and if the internet's not your thing, books. We have so many books out there. There's so many resources. There's literally no excuse for you not to know how to do something, should you want to learn how to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the final tip I'd like to put out there, and I'll gear this one more towards the males out there. If you're gonna look into doing this, learn to be handy, learn to swing a hammer, learn to build things, learn to fix things. If you've never had a blister on your hand or calluses on your hands, you might have a hard time doing this. It's not easy, so it's a mind game, not only a physical game. So get prepared for a huge learning curve. I've been in the trade for 20 plus years, and also done this stuff back in the day, and even this year it was a totally different learning curve, because you're totally different climate, totally different land, totally different climate, all that stuff. So no matter how well prepared you think you are, you're always going to be learning something. So I think that's a good final tip.
I think that's a good final one to end it on. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.